Hello, today I want to talk about the joy of JPEG and how I rediscovered it with my Fuji X-T4, the Fujifilm X-T4. So essentially, a couple of weeks ago, I had to take some photos for work. So I brought this camera into work. And I hadn't used it in a while because I'll admit that I've lately been shooting more film. I've been doing more film photography than digital photography, and I've mainly been using these cameras for video. So I had used it for video. I had taken the files off the SD card and then put the SD cards back in. Maybe moved some files around. I don't know. Maybe I had put like the files in a couple of different places on the computer. And then I put the SD cards back in. And I had forgotten that the X-T4, the Fujifilm, I think this is generally Fujifilm cameras. I don't know about the more recent ones, but definitely this generation can get a bit finicky and a bit persnickety about SD cards. Essentially what it wants is for the SD card to be just formatted on the camera itself. If you like move files around or delete files in the computer, then sometimes when you put it back into the Fujifilm X-T4, then it's kind of gets sluggish, glitches out, controls don't respond correctly, and that's what was happening to me. So, but I had forgotten the whole thing about making changes to the SD cards outside of the camera, and that was the sort of, for some reason, something that the camera didn't like. And so I'm starting to take these pictures for work. I'm not like a professional photographer or anything. I just needed sort of a pro camera to get the best quality possible. I start taking the pictures, but the camera, like I said, feels sluggish, so I reset it several times. I reset it back to factory settings, which means that all of my button assignments and sort of customizations were gone. At the time it was fine because I just needed it to work. You know, when you're in a professional setting, you just need things to work. You can't get fancy. So I just reset it, and to cut a long story short, the camera went back to its default shooting mode, which is JPEG, large, fine quality. So anyways, I left it like that for work because I wasn't going to be editing raw files or anything like that for work. It was like, that's fine. Even though I've generally, like 99% of the time, shot raw with this camera, I was like, it's fine, I don't care. I just need to take the pictures. So I left it like that. And I was kind of a little bit out of my depth, but I got the pictures done. A few days later, I used it again to take some pictures of some colleagues. There was a colleague that was leaving, so I brought it back to take some pictures of the group. By that point, I had remembered the whole SD card debacle, and I had formatted the SD cards in camera, and everything was working perfectly. But I was still doing JPEG because, again, these pictures were, there was no good reason for them to be raw files, and I didn't want to edit them. I just wanted to give them to my colleagues so that they could have them. So yeah, as I leave work, I start taking some more pictures with the X-T4, which is now filming me, and they're still JPEG, and I'm like, what the heck? Why not? Let's live a little. And then mainly I shoot in single shot mode, and I noticed that I had maybe taken a few shots in the past with some of the other modes, but there's the HDR mode, which takes 3 consecutive shots. The X-T4 shutter has a very particular feel to it. Because of maybe the IBIS mechanism, it's dampened really well, so it's like this, almost like a silencer, so you just have like but it's not a loud shutter. So it felt really cool to shoot these HDR shots. And obviously, when it comes to HDR, I have very strong preconceptions, let's put it that way, about HDR and sort of overdone and over-edited photographs of landscapes where the vibrant saturation, basically all the sliders are to the max, and you get this image that's grotesque, in my opinion. So generally, I don't use the HDR mode. But I thought, what the heck? Let's use it. Let's see what happens. And the fact is that the HDR mode that's in camera is much more subtle. So it pushes I believe the ISO to 800. And then obviously combines the three shots into one, so you don't have any control, but that was fine by me. What I found cool is how it kind of changed the colors. It made some colors more vibrant. Obviously, it kind of evened out the exposure, right? That's kind of what HDR does, but it wasn't necessarily overdone. And what became really magical is, and you've been seeing the pictures that I've taken, the pictures themselves are not that magical. I mean, they're special to me, but that's because I like sort of banal things, everyday kind of vistas, which for other people don't hold any meaning, but for me, they're a place and a time. But what was cool is combining the HDR mode with film simulations. Generally, my flow with the X-T4 has been to shoot with film simulations or not, but then apply them later in X-Raw Studio, which is the software front end of the camera's RAW engine. Basically, all the sort of image quality settings that the X-T4 has, you can have them in a sort of on your computer screen and edit the photos there while the camera is plugged in, but the actual RAW file is being processed in camera because the camera has to be connected while you use the software. Anyways, to cut a long story short, that's generally how I've worked. I take pictures in RAW, bring them into X-Raw Studio, look at the available film simulations, and then you can tweak like the highlight tone, shadow tone, and you can kind of fine-tune things there. It's not like the same as Lightroom or Capture One, but you do have some control over like the raw image itself, and I find it to be a nice balance and fairly fast to work with. But now shooting in JPEG only, I felt just like free to just experiment. And what was really cool was this shot that I'm going to put on screen now, that I enabled the classic negative film simulation, which is a tricky one to, it's a tricky film simulation because you can really blow things out, or the shadows can get really muddy, depending on the light situation. It's a hard film simulation to master. Sometimes in low light it'll look really good, and then sometimes in the middle of the day it'll look awful, and you'll have like highlights that are blown out to high heaven. But I think that the HDR mode actually kind of tames the film simulation a bit and boosts the color character of classic negative, and that's what I really like about this photograph. So anyways, to cut a long story short, once again, I've found my joy of JPEG, joy of shooting JPEG, and I'll be experimenting some more. And I think that the moral of the story is that sometimes it's good to get out of your comfort zone and try new things, and that when life gives you lemons, in my case a glitchy camera, make the most out of it. Thank you so much for watching.